All right, let me informally introduce myself and my colleague here today. My name is Derrick Wlodarz. I run a local computer repair / managed business services technology firm. I started doing this in my condo. Now we have an office. We're over in the Renaissance Complex at Northwest Highway in Potter, just west of Main East. Got a team of about 6 full-timers at this point. Ted is actually one of my good friends that I've known for many, many years. He works with us on a part-time basis because he actually is situated full-time at the Museum of Contemporary Art, and he handles a lot of their IT support and implementation, special projects, things of that nature. So between the two of us, we've got good enough brain trust here to share some insight on Windows 10. He's been using Windows 10 probably longer than I have. When did you get onto Windows 10 already?
When they first released the technical preview, I was actually using it prime time, so.
Okay, so he's been on longer than me, so I'd say he is probably the bigger expert on it than I am. But again, both of us, we're going to go through today and share what we can in terms of usability in Windows 10, all the new features that have been introduced. And I will say the class today is going to be focused on the desktop interface, right? Windows 8 was more so geared towards the tablet interface. We're going to gear a lot of what we're doing towards the desktop because that's where a lot of the new enhancements have been introduced, which a lot of people really, really do like. So let me keep this moving here. So everyone should have gotten as they walked in. If you weren't asked to grab one and you walked in, you snuck in and didn't grab one, there's 2 handouts that we provided for everyone here today. One is the class agenda, everything we're going to go through, talk about, show you, and demo up on our computer up at the front here. And it's divided into logical sections, so there's a little bit of talking we're going to be doing up front here, but we're going to go into demo mode at bullet point number 4, and after that it's all demos after that point. So we're going to be showing live up here how to do some of the new stuff that is in Windows 10 now. You can feel free to write notes, and I want to say this because we need to stay pretty tight to our schedule being done by 8:30. I would say reserve questions till the end. I want to reserve at least about a 15-20 minute block at the end for questions. So please reserve the questions. We tend to get off on tangents otherwise if people start interjecting as we're going along. Okay? The back of the agenda, if you look towards the bottom of the back, there are resources for further learning. And what I put on there, what we compiled, are a bunch of different links. Some of the things we're going to be talking about in the introductory part of today, where you can get the media creation tool, where some of the differences between the Windows 10 editions, a lot of that stuff that I don't want to waste too much time on. You can research on your own at some of those links, so that's all good information there. And of course, our official YouTube channel is on the back over there. We've got 4+ years of great content, over 40 classes that we've done. I can't believe it's been that many so far, but we've done a lot of classes here, and they're all up on YouTube. So if you couldn't make one of our former classes, you can always rewatch them. They're all in HD quality, so it's as good as being here. So that's that. And the other handout is our cheat sheet, as I call it. It goes over a lot of the changes with the new start menu, as that is what I feel a lot of people are having the toughest time with, is readjusting to the expanded start menu. One side shows you the changes and differences between Windows 7 and Windows 10, as I presume a lot of you are coming from Windows 7. And the other side goes into detail about what all the subsections of the new start menu represent, how you can customize them. We'll go over in demonstration how you can do that, what it all is, but something you can take home and use with you when you're in front of your computer today. Okay? So I wanted to, this is our second Windows 10 class. I want to take a quick little hands survey and find out who is already on Windows 10. I want to get a feel. Oh, wow. Holy smokes. Yeah, it wasn't that big. We did our last class at Lincolnwood Library, and it was about a little less than half of the crowd. So I would say that's probably about 80% of the audience. So still going to go over a little bit of an introductory section for those that are going to be rewatching that are still undecided, and some of the nuances around Windows 10. But again, I do want to get into demos for everyone else. And then I guess if you want to, who hasn't moved yet to Windows 10? So a few of you. Okay. You guys have existing Windows 7 or 8 machines? at home?
We have a hybrid. Best Buy put something that looks like the old Windows 7
Okay.
on the Windows 10, and it's even more confusing.
On the Windows 8, because you said you didn't move yet. You're on Windows 8, I presume.
I think we bought it, but he made it easy for us.
We're probably talking about the start menu
Yeah.
replacing. They probably put a start menu that looked like Windows 7 on
Yes,
there
I
for
think
you.
so.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we got a good majority here running Windows 10. So again, we're going to jump into some of the introductory aspects, especially for those that haven't moved yet, if they haven't upgraded. Upgrading sometimes can be a little scary. There's sometimes some issues that you can run into, even though this has been the cleanest upgrade of between Windows versions, and Microsoft says there's over 110 million people that have already moved in the first month and a half, less than 2 months. That's a big, big move. I think that's one of the quickest adoptions they've ever had.
Their goal is to have 1 billion devices, I think, in 5 years, I think is what it was.
Yeah, so pretty lofty goal they've got.
We'll see.
So let's dive right into it. I'm going to let Ted cover some of the basic aspects of the Windows 10.
All right, so my name is Ted. How's everyone tonight? Good, great. So for the 80% of you that are already on Windows 10, this is for the 20%. So let me start off by saying you have 1 year to upgrade your Windows 7 or 8 or 8.1 to Windows 10 for free. After that year, you will have to pay retail pricing if you wanted to upgrade. Now, for those people that say, I don't want to really even bother with this computer that I currently have, and you want to buy a new computer, that usually license is covered in the cost of it. So, one thing to keep note of, with Windows 10, they're saying it is the last version of Windows. They're trying to make it a Windows as a service, as they say. Now, one thing to keep note of, we don't know for sure what Microsoft is sort of planning, but what you should expect, at least in the coming months, in November, they're going to be releasing a feature upgrade for Windows 10, which has a few different things, which we're not really going to cover because nothing's really finalized just yet. But that's something to keep a note of. You should be expecting upgrades over the next year, 2 years. And really what they're going to do is, rather than have Windows 10 and 11, they're going to have just Windows 10 and upgrades to Windows 10 as they move along. And for those that are still on Windows Vista or XP, you're sort of out of luck. You will need to buy a license of Windows 10. So please keep that in mind. And also keep in mind the flavor of Windows that you get, either it be Home or Pro. If you're related anywhere when it comes to business, if you have a business, do any business work on your machine, I would totally recommend just sticking to Pro. If you have a consumer device that you only watch movies on or do other things with that, and mostly entertainment based, that's where Home would kind of come into play with that. Now, some of the benefits of Pro versus Home. Pro allows you to do encryption of the hard drive through BitLocker. You can share the domain. You can do remote desktop. Those are some of the highlights of the version for Pro. And another thing to keep note of is updates are actually forced. Now, there's a difference between updates versus upgrades. Windows 10 will usually do upgrades for feature releases. However, when it comes to updates, those are usually security, stability updates that kind of make sure that your system is running smoothly continually. It's not going to add any extra features. That's where the upgrades are going to come into play. Now, for those that are going to update to, or I should say upgrade to Windows 10, be wary of your privacy settings. On first boot with Windows 10, there's going to be a few different check marks. You can you shouldn't gloss over those. You have the option between express settings and advanced settings. Usually if you're kind of worried about privacy, go to advanced and kind of read that over before you skip ahead. So that's just one thing I wanted to kind of keep note of, because some of you are a little bit more concerned about your privacy than others.
And a lot of those changes with privacy over the old versions of Windows comes into play with the feature that we're going to cover that's called Cortana, which is the voice assistant that you can use in Windows 10. So if you are very concerned about privacy, and you turn that stuff off, you probably won't be able to use Cortana because it does a lot of telemetry and number crunching behind the scenes, using some of your information to give you responses and things of that nature. So if you are uncomfortable with that, you might have to say no to being able to use Cortana. So that's the one big thing I want to say about, as Ted mentioned, the whole privacy thing in Windows 10.
For the 80% of you that have already upgraded, I mean, you've already sort of went past that most likely, and you can use Cortana in its current state. So again, some of the features you'll get, some of the metrics that Microsoft has mentioned, they're trying to make sure that it's anonymous, that they're not going to record anything. It's one of those things you have to do with a grain of salt. You kind of have to trust them to make sure that they're not going to use that information against you or the community at large.
And just so no one gets too scared about it, if you're already using an iPhone with Siri or a Google Android phone with the Google Now service, you're probably already accepting of those kind of things. You've already said yes to be able to allow those kind of things to happen. So Microsoft's not the only one, that's doing stuff like this. So, I don't want to raise the alarm too heavily, but we do want to be transparent that, there are extra security, privacy concerns, with the Windows 10 release.
So let me mention a little bit brief on when it comes to upgrading. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind of what hardware you're running. If it's probably 3 years older, you have to kind of be wary of that. Anything that's not an i series, like an i3, an i5, an i7, we don't usually recommend installing it on that machine. Like, for example, if it's a Core 2 Duo from Intel, there's a little sticker on the box that'll say Core 2 Duo or the like. You can theoretically install it on these, but the performance and some of the gains you won't necessarily see on this box. So keep that in mind when it comes to upgrading. Also, make sure that you back up your device. If you're not sure how to do that, we can always talk with you after class, or you can always attend the help desk sessions as well. So make sure you have a backup before you upgrade anything. That it happens too often where people upgrade, it breaks in the middle of it, and you're like, well, there's not much you can do. Usually you then have to come to one of us to kind of help you along and fix that, restore your data.
Can you just repeat what you said about not putting it on certain machines?
Again, if it's a Core 2 Duo, I would recommend against installing Windows 10 on there. You can. It's not really too much of a problem. If it's anything older than 3 years, I would say it's not worth it. I would almost recommend getting a new machine.
There are some situations where it's okay. I have someone in the audience now where we upgraded a system that was a little bit on the older side, but he had other things that compensated that allowed us to say it's okay to move it. So again, the generalities we're saying is for on the average person, there may be a situation where your system would be just fine running it. But on the average, we're saying about 3 to 4 years. Older than that, that's kind of territory for, okay, maybe a new system might be the best approach. So
now,
if you have further questions about that after class, we can bring it up during Q&A. We can answer it further.
So say you go on Windows 10, and for those 80% that are using it, if it's been longer than a month, well, you can't really revert back to your Windows 8. Microsoft doesn't allow that. However, you have that 1 month grace period where you can then say, well, I don't like it. I'm going to go back to Windows 8, Windows 8.1, Windows 7, and the like. So keep that in mind. You have a month to kind of go back and keep things the same. So let's go over, do you want to kind of go over the Upgrade Advisor a little bit?
Yeah, so the Upgrade Advisor, and if you haven't moved, this is for those that haven't moved yet, okay? So if you haven't moved, you're probably going to see, I wish I should have got a picture of it, but on the bottom right-hand corner, for most people, if you haven't moved your taskbar to a crazy side of the screen, for most people it's going to be the bottom right-hand corner. You're going to have a little Windows flag that's going to be showing up. I see some heads nodding in the back over there. So that little Windows flag is the Windows 10 upgrade flag that will allow you to click on it and reserve your copy. I think that the reserve your copy is what they call the tool itself. And when you go through that process, it does two things. It's going to tie the installation to your system, so it allows you to go through and do that upgrade seamlessly. For most people, it's supposed to be seamless. But the biggest thing it also does is it checks to make sure that your hardware and software are compatible for Windows 10. So again, Microsoft says most systems that are running Windows 7 or Windows 8 should work okay. Well, the case is, in reality, not all of them do work okay. So the tool allows it to, behind the scenes, scan and churn and make sure that every piece of hardware, software, your printer, your mouse, your scanner that you got next to your computer, make sure all that stuff, it has a green check mark from Microsoft and that it can be upgraded okay. Because there are problems that can happen if you upgrade a machine that hasn't allowed that process to function okay. If you use that reserve your edition Windows flag in the bottom right-hand corner of the machine, it's going to force you to do that before it will even let you install. I've got some customers that called us and said, hey, it's not letting me install. We went on their system and found out that that was because the upgrade advisor said that there was hardware that was incompatible. And we have had that happen. We have someone in the audience where that was the case. The video card actually was incompatible. We have to change the video card to be able to upgrade to Windows 10. So there are the exceptions to the rule out there for that.
Now, theoretically, you can install Windows 10 even on like a 1995 computer, like a Pentium computer. They've done that. It's very, very slow, but it can be done. So, one thing I will give Microsoft credit is they've done a very good job when it comes to making it support a wide range of devices. So, it will most likely work if you wanted to give it a shot. But again, there's certain things I would be wary of. Let's try to save the questions.
And people always ask me, well, what software is going to work? Again, the upgrade advisor should check all the software on there. But if you're buying a new computer and that has Windows 10 preloaded on it, you have no choice. I would say in general, what we've seen on the average, is that software going back about 6-7 years, up to about 6-7 years old, works okay. After about that mark is when we start to see a lot of compatibility problems on people's machines. So again, exceptions to the rule, but in general, about 6 years, 7 years back. Anything older than that, you're going to have to buy the new version, the new edition, the replacement to that piece of software. So that's what we've been seeing from our experiences.
And one more thing to keep note of, if you're going to perform the upgrade, do it when I would recommend doing it like when you're going to go to bed. It's going to take a few hours to complete, and don't expect it to be done in 20 minutes. When I ran the update, I was done in 20 minutes, but again, I've ran it on some other machines, and it's taken 2-3 hours.
Yeah, if you have a lot of files on your system, if you have a little bit slower, a little bit older system, it's going to take longer, And we've seen some systems in our office that took 3-4 hours to upgrade. They worked. They upgraded just fine, but it depends on the system. The newest systems are going to go very quick. A little bit older, it's going to take more time. So don't get scared if it doesn't happen in that first half hour or first hour. It's still probably churning, and it'll tell you what's going on or whether it had an issue and it had to just roll back the upgrade. So, okay?
Let's go. The biggest changes since Windows 8 and Windows 7.
Yeah, so let's keep moving here so we can stay on time here. Some of the biggest things, we're going to be covering a lot of these things in demonstration, but I just wanted to bring out into the focus a lot of the things that have changed since Windows 7, Windows 8. For those of you that have systems of that age, I am not covering anything changes since Windows XP, as that's way too old of a system at this point. One of the biggest things is in Windows 8 we had a start screen that acted as the start menu for us. Microsoft reverted back, listened to what a lot of people had to say. A lot of people didn't like the start screen. It was meant for touch screens, it was meant for tablets, things of that nature, touch kind of interface primarily. So in Windows 10 now we have a proper start menu, and that's on the cheat sheet I provided everyone. We're going to spend the first part of our demonstration on the new start menu, so everyone can get acclimated and become aware of all the different sections of the start menu. It looks simple up front, but there's a lot of things you can do with the new start menu, so it's actually pretty interesting and very customizable from that perspective. The Action Center actually has been revamped as well, so a lot of the kind of Action Center things you see, or Notification Center on your phone, your mobile phone, a lot of that kind of stuff has been rolled into the right-hand side of Windows 10, so you can get notifications of new emails, appointment reminders, all kinds of things like that that you used to have to go out on your Windows machine and find. Well, it brings them out into the focus, out in the open for you up front. So that's really nice as well. If you're using a Windows convertible tablet with Windows 10 that has a keyboard that detaches, or like a Lenovo Yoga that can flip, like it has can go into tablet mode or into laptop mode. You can flip the device over. There's a feature called Continuum that works on those devices. Actually, your system went into that by mistake. You forced it on the system, and that's when the whole start screen came up on you. So for devices that have a convertible style function, that happens automatically. You take the keyboard off of your Surface tablet, it'll take you into tablet mode, you put the keyboard back, it brings you back into desktop mode. So that happens automatically, you don't have to do that manually now. The charms bar, if you haven't used Windows 8, it doesn't apply to you, but there was a charms bar that came up on the right-hand side of the screen on Windows 8 where you could get to settings and search and the big start button that used to be in the middle over here. That has been removed. I actually like the charms bar, so I was kind of disappointed, but charms bar is gone. A lot of the things we used to control in the control panel, the area where we tinker and change settings and make power adjustments, a lot of that has been moved out and into a, what is it called, the settings area? It's just called settings now. Settings. So it's not very complex like the control panel. For those of you that like us that like to tinker, all that stuff's still in the control panel, but for the average person, they've made it a lot easier to make a lot of those adjustments that you used to have to know, well, which control panel item did I have to go into? That's been made a lot easier as well this go around.
One thing to keep note for those that still go to the old control panel, they find their way to it and they use it. You can, a lot of the same settings that are in Windows 7 and Windows 8 are still there, but some new settings are in the settings app for the start menu. So keep that in mind, that certain settings, most of the settings that you need to change are in the settings app. Most of the new settings that are particular to Windows 10 are also in that settings button.
And when we go to the start menu, which is our first demo, I'm going to show you where the settings button is. So if you never knew and you're in Windows 10, you never knew how to get into your settings, I'll show you. It's one of the first things I'm going to show everyone. So everyone will be well aware of how to do that. Cortana is one of the neatest features on Windows 10. It's one of my favorite. It is a function that has been around on the Windows phones now for about 1.5 years, but it's now in all Windows 10 desktops. And it really comes to life if you have a microphone connected to your machine. So we have a big mic. We got a big old saucer sitting on the table here. We're gonna do some demonstrations. I'm gonna show you how neat Cortana is, because a lot of the stuff we used to manually go out and search for on the internet, it's pretty nifty. It can do a lot of that for you. So if you've used Siri, you've used Google now on your Android phone, you're kind of familiar with what that can do, but you've never had that on a computer-style device. Now we do. I'm gonna show you what that's all about once we get to Cortana. The Windows Store is where we can get the new style called Universal Apps from the Windows Store. If you use an iPhone, you go to the App Store. If you use an Android, you go to the Google Play Store. If you're on a Windows 10 device, you now have the option to go into the Windows Store to get modern apps for yourself. And they're really neat because compared to traditional applications that came on disks that we put in and hope that it installed right and hope that the files weren't busted after it finished, Windows Store apps are very simple. You find it, you install it, and it just works. And if you want to remove it, it's one click. None of the baloney that used to be around with old school apps, traditional apps, is entailed with the newer style modern apps. So we'll get into the Windows Store a little bit later as well. There's a function called virtual desktops, which we're going to touch on right at the end today of demonstrations. It is a function that has been on the Mac OS, on Mac laptops and desktops now for a few years, so Microsoft is playing a little catch up on that. But it's a way for those, especially that don't have multiple monitors, and you want to simulate that effect by having things that you can put on a different workspace for yourself, you can now do that in a virtual desktop. So that's a new feature as well that Microsoft has introduced. Two last things. Internet Explorer has been replaced with Microsoft Edge, so that's the new web browser that comes installed by default on Windows 10 machines. So if you saw the E icon that looks a little different than the old Internet Explorer icon, that's Microsoft Edge. We're going to go into what Edge can do, some of the new features that it has, like reading mode, which is very cool, annotation mode, which is very, very neat. No other browser has annotation mode out there, so I'm going to show you how that works as well. And then again, if you used to be using Outlook Express or Windows Live Mail to check your mail, there's brand new apps from the Windows Store that take care of your mail, your contacts, your calendaring. They integrate with Action Center, so you get notifications on that. So it's that iPhone, Google, Android device style experience on your computer now. So, so that's just a sampling of some of the new things that were introduced. And I guess we'll jump into demos unless there's something else you want to mention.
That covers mostly everything. Well, let me just mention that for those that are having problems with using Chrome, Firefox, or the new Microsoft Edge browser, they hid the old one in the Windows, so you can still access the old Internet Explorer for compatibility reasons. We're not going to go over that, but I just want you to be aware of that. So if you're still having problems, that could be an option you could use. So just one thing to keep note of.
Okay.
Why don't you do the demo of it, and I can maybe talk over it?
For the start menu?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. All right, let's jump on the desktop. We're going to get out of PowerPoint mode here and get into the fun stuff here. So where's the start menu located? If you've used Windows at all in the past, the start menu has always been in the lower left-hand corner of the screen, and it's back in the same place. So Microsoft has returned it back to the lower left-hand corner. It's not an orb like it used to be in Windows 7 or Vista. It's a square button, easy to find. And again, if you have a touch-style device, you can use your fingers for any of the things that I'm showing here today. I don't have a touch screen, so I can't show you that, but you can simulate almost anything, any of my clicks, any of my movement with a mouse finger if you're on a tablet-style device for yourself.
So let's kind of go into the meat and potatoes of Windows 10 primarily. So we're going to talk and kind of go over the start menu, which is again very kind of biggest change with Windows. So let's go over the main kind of areas that we sort of talked about. So in the upper left-hand corner, we have a profile icon. This basically allows you to kind of change. You can change your specific settings within there. Pretty much, obviously from here you have to be wary of the power button, which is on the lower right. The lock and sign out are there. In Windows 7, a lot of the combinations of lock and sign out were in the power button. That's actually now up in the profile section, so please keep that in mind. In the middle left, we have your most used apps, sometimes referred to as recent apps. So if you open up an application, be it a desktop app or another Windows UI app, Metro app, that'll appear there for you. It really does come in handy when you're using Word or Excel pretty frequently. That'll just pop up right there for you. And then
up here. So right up here, this whole section, these are the most used apps. So that translates directly to what you had in Windows 7. When you open up your start menu, the whole left side was the most used. That's what that is. It's the same exact thing.
And then in the lower left, I just want to briefly mention the recently added. This actually does come in handy if you do install a new application, desktop or through the Windows Store. That will appear there. That has actually come in handy a few different times for me where I wanted to actually access the application quickly and efficiently. And then below that, we have a few new areas. File Explorer is pretty much your Windows Explorer. You don't have My Computer anymore, or this. You still have this PC, which you can enable, but mostly, if you wanted to get through your main heart of your system, you would normally go through File Explorer. Why don't you maybe click on that?
Yep.
You can see.
So for all intents and purposes, this is when you used to go into My Computer. This is pretty much what it brings you into.
You have, in essence, you have all your recent locations that you've accessed, which do come in handy. These will actually auto-populate. So if you go to a folder before, it'll actually pop up there, and that actually does come in handy. I'm not sure how to disable that though. You have your most used entries, such as pictures, documents, downloads, all the stuff that you normally are expected to use in Windows 7 are right there for you. So they really made it nice and easy. They've also included OneDrive, which is, if you've used Dropbox before, if you've used Google Drive, again, OneDrive is that syncing service that's there, and that's sort of built into Windows. So if you log in to Windows using a Microsoft account, that'll pop right up there for you. And we usually recommend using that to store any immediate files that'll be backed up to the cloud and so on and so forth. And then below that, we have the normal, actually, did you go? No, yeah, it's fine. This is where normally you'd expect My Computer or Computer being replaced with this PC, and then obviously your desktop being the desktop, documents, download, so on and so forth. And then obviously C drive being where you want to kind of get in the heart of the computer. And then one last thing, the network. So if you have any laptops or desktops on your local network at home, you can then should be able to access those while setting it up properly. I think that's about it for
All right. Back into the start menu.
So settings is pretty much the new control panel. So that's one thing to keep in mind. That'll pop up a new interface that people are going to be very surprised. But really, I would not even learn this. I would rather just find a setting. Use the search bar. It's there for a reason. You can usually find any setting that you're looking for, and it'll pop right up. You can learn through each of the little categories, but again, I would say if you know what you're looking for, search for it. It's usually the best thing you can do. Windows does a pretty good job when it comes to figuring out what you're trying to find. Okay. What do we go over next? And then lastly, or actually two more, power. So again, this is, the power button used to always be on this side, but now they moved it all to this side. Now that's going to get a little bit of use to. I sometimes will actually go over here to try to find it. But, and I used to always, one thing I really didn't like is the sign out was there as well, log off. Again, they moved that up to the profile section. But again, if you just need to restart your machine, it's right there, pretty simple to get to. And then lastly, let's talk about all apps. Now, one thing to keep note, I should go back for me. For those that missed it, there was actually a little new icon that's right there. That'll usually indicate if you've installed something in the Windows Store or the desktop, that will appear there, indicating that there's a new piece of software that's on your machine. That actually does come in handy, and if you actually go to All Apps now, I think if you scroll down, it'll tell you what the app is new.
I think the new ones are up here actually. Weather Channel is my new one. So.
Okay, well I know usually, if it's a desktop app as well, it'll pop up. And right next to the app, there'll be a little icon that says new. So if you've never seen that app before, and usually you could just go there, start up the app, and then that'll go away if you really kind of find that annoying. So, but overall, this is your new start menu. A lot of the all programs, for example, are going to be located here. Desktop applications, located here. Your Windows Store applications that you download and install through the Windows Store are all located here. In Windows 8, it used to be where there was very sort of partitioned separately, where you kind of have things a little bit out of order. But they've tried to make it very traditional, where people are used to this sort of layout and combine things so it's very effective for people to use.
And for me, actually, I don't even go into, and I've been using Windows 10 now for about a month and a half or so. Any apps I need, I actually don't like. I like a clean desktop, so I don't put many things on my desktop. So most apps like Word and Excel or anything I just search for it in the search bar, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. But I just hit the little search bar over here, and I just do a search for it. So I just type in Word, and I just launch right into Word like that. So that's how I like to do it, because I've come from Windows 8, and I was so used to searching for things that I like doing that still. It's just faster for me, because I'm always in front of a keyboard. I mean, it depends on what kind of device you're in front of, but for me, typing's really quick, and I just like to bang, bang, bang out a little, first few letters of that app, and it finds it for me, and I can just go into it. So instead of keeping the thousands of icons on your desktop, and you never know, which one is where or where did it go. So
now keep in mind, now this is the Cortana app that's right here. If you don't like this, you can always make this smaller, where it'll minimize it to just a small little icon, or you can even get rid of it. If you don't want it there, I can show you later where to disable that, but that's one thing to keep in mind. But the beautiful thing is, actually, if you're in the Start menu, you can also type there to look for your application. It'll open up Cortana automatically for you, and it'll pop right up. So you can always just open up Excel. So Cortana, one thing to keep in mind, you don't need to necessarily accept it to use these search features, but if you want to use the more advanced features, that's where it'll kind of bug you to say, oh, make sure you accepted the privacy settings and or are logged into a Microsoft account. So that's about it. I wanted to kind of
So the apps are free.
Depends on what you get. In the Windows Store,
Sorry.
there's
I didn't want to digress. I thought it was an easy answer, like yes or no. So,
depends.
Okay.
Some are, some aren't.
Okay, so later when we
Yeah.
have time. Thank you.
Let me actually mention one quick thing.
Yeah.
So one thing I actually really kind of like that comes in handy, this is a little more for advanced people, is you can actually right-click on this little button right here. And that gives you, this is in Windows 8.1, that allows you to do this. So you get a little bit more advanced features that you can kind of access that if you're familiar with, you can still use. So Windows 8.1 has this, Windows 10 also has this. I just wanted to mention it. You can also do shutdown and sign out in this little area right here. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And you have all the normal stuff you'd normally expect in the Windows 8.1. So I just wanted to touch base on that. Again, I right-clicked on the start button to get to there.
So let's touch on the right-hand side of the start menu a little bit now. So the right-hand side of the start menu is actually now where we have this concept of tiles, the application tiles. A lot of them are moving and have images and text over them, and that's what Microsoft calls their live tiles. So these are like when you use your iPhone or Android phone, you click on the buttons that get you into apps. This does that, but this also displays pertinent contextual information. So for example, my weather app, even though it's saying Washington, D.C., I was doing some searches with Cortana about Washington, D.C., so that's probably why it's showing that. But it's showing me my weather, so I don't have to necessarily go in the app and just to get the current temperature for my location. Now again, most of the time it shows Park Ridge, so I can just spot check that and see what the temperature is. But that's just one example of how the live tiles could be very useful in terms of what you can do in terms of customizing and having the things that you care about most in this area. And as you can see, 70% of the start menu is taken up by the area that you can fully customize. So as you can see here, I've got all kinds of different tiles, live tiles over here, up on the screen right now. And they're actually divided into sections. It's hard to see, but do you see the title over here? It's a default category that Microsoft made called Play and Explore. It's meant to be where your Xbox app, your games, your movies and media and things like that are stored. But I was moving things around at last class, so everything's really out of order right now. I just wanted to get to the point of you can have stuff positioned where you want. So think of this as your workboard, your thing that you go into, and it's customized the way that you want it to be customized. We can move around a category, so we can take a whole grouping of apps and we can move it to another part of the screen. And as you saw there, Ted went ahead and adjusted it, moved it around, right to left, left to right. Everything's movable here. I can hold down on any app and move it. So Ted's going ahead and moving the different apps up on the screen and changing their position, again, to customize where the locations are of those different icons. Now, not only can we move them, we can also resize them. And different apps have different size options. So if you right-click on any app, you'll get an option that tells you can resize it. So that one right now is on medium. I can go large on that and make it very big. And again, some of them don't have any contextual information they show in what's called live tile view. So you may not want all of them to be large, but something like weather, yeah, that might be useful. I think the 3-day forecast shows up if you're on the large or the wide option up on there. And just so you know right away, sometimes it doesn't update immediately, but it takes maybe a few minutes for it to fully update for you. If you don't want an app, there you go, 5-day forecast actually. I take that back. They give you more than I thought. If you don't want a particular app to show in the start menu, that's fine too. You can right-click on it and go ahead and unpin from start. And now I just took off my entire weather app off my start menu. Doesn't mean it's uninstalled. It's still on my computer. I've just taken it off of my start menu so I don't have to see it right away. Right? When winter months start and it's just going to be snowing all the time, I don't want to be seeing that's just snow the next day, so I don't care to see the weather. But again, you can change that whenever you like. You're not stuck to what app positions and what apps are showing up on the start menu. If you wanted to bring an app into the start menu and show up over here that's not showing, for example, we can go and find it in the All Apps list. And let's go find Weather Channel. Let's bring back Weather Channel. So go all the way down to W. I could search for it if I wanted to. We're showing the manual method. So right-click on Weather and do Pin to Start. Now it's come back and now I can move it anywhere I want to place it. And it's being a little funky on Ted right now, but there we go. And you can resize it. And if you don't like the live tile functionality where it shows you the weather preview, for example, right-click on it and just do turn live tile off, and it will not show you any of that preview, and it just becomes a bland icon at that point. I don't like that because, I mean, the whole reason for live tiles is to bring some life into these icons and not make it so bland, like they are on the, some of the iPads and Android stuff like that. So it's supposed to have some good information, so you don't have to necessarily go into the app to find some of those small things that you may be looking for.
So let me mention a couple small things when it comes to actually creating a new section. If you wanted to create a new section, the easiest thing I would recommend is actually dragging to a new location. So I would just take, for example, take this calendar and then move it over until it highlights with your mouse or even your finger, and then you have a new group here. And then if you click into the group, you can then change it. So for example, you can call
the title. You can set a title for it for yourself.
So I'm calling this group for just productivity. So I can kind of keep a list of apps that I use that keep me productive. I really think comes in handy. I use a lot of different little things when it comes to just grouping things. Like most apps that I like to use are in one section, and productivity in another, and so on and so forth. And so kind of organize things that way. And that's sort of your new pin to start in that sense, where in Windows 7 you could actually pin the icons, but rather than icons, now you have full-fledged little live tiles or panels that kind of give you information that normally you wouldn't get through those icons. And then also one more thing, you still have a scroll bar here. You can use this obviously manually, but you can also use the scroll wheel on your mouse.
And the scrolling is separate, so you have your app scroll list, and then you have your separate scroll list for your actual live tiles over here. So keep that in mind. If you start scrolling over here and ask, why aren't my apps moving? Well, it's because you're not in the right contextual place of the start menu. You have to be over that section for it to scroll for you.
You want to think of it as two different parts in some sense, where you have a lot of your configurations here, and then most of your applications that you would want to use in the right-hand side. Now, another thing that I want to keep note of, you don't need any of these apps. If you don't want any of them, you can hide them all away, or at least the majority of them, and stick to this computer or a bunch of folders. But in case you love this feature and you want to use a lot of it, but you're like, well, I'm running out of space. It's kind of hard for me to navigate around here. You can actually expand the start menu to make it wider. And actually, I think there's the limit for this one, but in this case, I think we should be able to go smaller. And then the same goes for horizontal or vertical. So you can make this a nice and compact if you feel like it, or you can make it nice and big. I think this is actually the biggest it can go. But again, you can actually have it go as long as you want. I don't think I've actually reached the limit, but I've only tried so many apps. So keep that in mind when it comes to kind of making this your own personal start menu. And also, one more thing I wanted to note is you should be able to, quote me if I'm wrong, Derrick.
Yeah.
You should, start menus actually can sync from computer to computer if you logged in with a Microsoft account. So if you have a tablet that's what has Windows 10 on it, you can it'll sync over to that. So you don't have to do a lot of the work manually. It'll be saved to OneDrive, which it uses for a lot of their setting customization, and keep it there. So if you start up a new computer, you'll probably be running in minutes when it comes to kind of getting it customized the way you want it.
And if I'm accurate, I believe it not only customizes the positions of the apps, but I think it reinstalls the apps you had from the Windows Store automatically on a new computer when you log into it. So it does all the heavy lifting of putting those apps back on for you right away for yourself. And again, that's only for Windows Store apps, the new apps. That's not for traditional old school Microsoft Office, QuickBooks, Quicken, TurboTax. Those aren't modern apps. Those are called legacy apps, and those have to be still done manually by hand. So just keep that in mind. All right. So let's go into the Windows Store tab. Let's jump into and show people how we can get new apps. You're probably asking, where do I find these newfangled apps that we keep talking about?
I'm just going to search for it.
So we searched for it. You can click on it. By default, there's a little icon in your taskbar that looks like a shopping bag with a Windows logo. You can go through there. There's multiple different ways to do almost anything in Windows these days. We just showed you 2 different methods for that. So this is the Windows Store. If you've been in the Apple App Store, the Google Play Store, it's very similar to that concept. As soon as you get launched into the Windows Store, and one thing I want to preface with, and Ted interject here if need be, again, a Microsoft account is necessary for a lot of this neat stuff to work. If you're not signed into a Microsoft account on your Windows 10 PC, it's going to bug you every time you try to install an app. Sign in with your Microsoft account. Sign in with your Microsoft account. So get it over with up front, and so you don't have to keep hearing that every time you want to put an application on. Because a lot of this stuff revolves around that Microsoft account.
One thing to keep in mind is when you do a fresh install, and it's not too late, you can always add it later. We can talk about that later after class on how to do the later aspect. But when you first install Windows 10, it'll give you an option to log into your Microsoft account. Usually the easiest thing you can do, again for the 20% of people that still haven't done it, is go through with that method. Because having it done the other way, I had to run a couple extra steps to kind of get there, and it was a little bit more convoluted than it needed to be.
So, a few main aspects to the Windows Store that I want everyone to be aware of so that you can use this with ease. One of the first things you'll notice is that it's divided into logical sections. So if you look on the upper left-hand corner here, you'll see we're on the home screen right now. It's a lot of the biggest, most popular apps, the ones that are trending on the market right now that a lot of people are installing. Those are what you're going to see up front over here for all the various different categories. So there's left to right scroll for any of the little sections that they're showing here in sort of browsing mode, quick browsing mode as we're in right now. And if we scroll up and down, we'll see the different top free apps, top free games. So, I mean, you get the picture for what the homepage is trying to get across. A lot of the more popular, things on there. And one thing to also note is that it's not only apps. So the apps is one of the biggest aspects of the new Windows Store, but it is just like Google Play and Apple App Store. You can get movies, you can get music. It's an all-inclusive app/media/streaming kind of a service where you can, purchase different things, rent movies, things of that nature. Now again, there you go, Jurassic World, you can go ahead and buy for $18. I can't speak to how big the selection is of the movies and music, things like that. It's fairly expansive. Google might have some things here or there that Windows doesn't have. Apple might have some stuff that Windows doesn't have, and vice versa. It's always a game in that regard. But most of the popular items they should have available for you if you're interested in it.
One thing I wanted to touch base is with the application selection. If you have an Android phone or an iPhone, you're going to usually have an app there that you want installed. And that doesn't always translate well with the Windows Store app. They don't always have the app that you're looking for, or the same app you're looking for, in the Windows Store. They have similar apps that should, in some cases, do a better job than even the official application. But keep in mind that, again, some of the applications that you use on an Android or an iPhone might not always appear here. And again, one thing to note is these are universal apps. So if you're using a Windows mobile phone, for example, or a tablet, or on the desktop, they'll work. Regardless of the platform that it's on, it'll work. At least that's what they're trying to push. Some of the developers that are out there still haven't moved to this new universal way of thinking, so they have to play catch up with that. But overall, like for example, I use Wunderlist. I think it's a fantastic app. I actually recommend people download it. I use it to keep myself productive all the time. I was surprised this actually popped up. And it's my go-to app. It works on Android, Windows Phone. Like having it being cross-compatible like this is just amazing. Free little. I don't get any kickback.
So as Ted showed, we went into an app over here. He found an app that he liked. He knows the app already. Some common aspects to any given app that you may go into on the Windows Store. Upper left-hand side, it's going to show you the logo for the app, the name of the app. It'll show you in multiple places the star rating for it, which is the overall aggregate of what people are saying and thinking about that app. So 1 to 5 stars. People go on here and they review all the apps. So you'll know fairly quickly Is that app good or is it bad? A 4.1 across how much? Over 800 ratings? That's pretty good, right? So you can make that judgment call and see whether or not you should even try that app based upon what some of the others are saying about the app, and you can read what people have to say. Simple, powerful, clean, on and on and on. Again, you get the idea here about the review system. So every single app has the review system, so you can have that transparency about all the different apps that they have available.
And one thing I wanted to also note is the additional information section here. This will tell you, again, this is more for those that are concerned more about privacy. It will tell you the permissions that it uses. If it uses a camera, it'll tell you that it's using the camera, so on and so forth. Another thing to keep in mind, also the size of the application. Now this is kind of a smaller application. 32 megs is not that big. But some of the applications can be very, very large. So depending on what you have, if you have a lot of apps that you downloaded from the store and you're trying to use this on a tablet, which may only have 16 gigs, keep that in mind, because it may not, you may only have end up having 1 gig left when you're all said and done with everything. So
and the biggest apps on the average, everyone always asks me, well, what are the biggest apps I can get? The biggest ones are usually games. So if you like to play a lot of the games from these stores, they're going to need a lot of room on the device because they take up the most room usually.
And another thing, one more thing to note is how many times you can install an application. Microsoft actually keeps count of how many devices the application was installed on. And we won't go over it, we can talk about this later. You might have to authorize an application, the application from that device for you to install it on another device. Again, it's 10 devices. Not too many people have more than 10, so I don't think you'll be running into this problem. But if, say down the line, you've been switching computers yearly for whatever reason, then you might end up reaching this device limit.
Is there any app in particular that someone wants us to do a search for to see if we can find it? And I want to show how the install process looks for an app.
What's the name of this application again?
This one?
Wunderlist?
Wunderlist.
Can we install it?
Go ahead. So tell everyone what you did so they can know how to install the app.
So like with Android and iOS, there's usually a button that says either buy or download. Usually for Android, it's a download button. But for Apple, for example, they'll have it where you'll literally buy a free app. And the same thing sort of applies here, where you literally, in essence, I bought a free app. What it does, it'll keep track of the application. Because it's free, it'll basically say, oh, you already have this application, you can install it or download it. In fact, if I actually uninstall it, I'll do the uninstall later. But what I ended up doing is just hitting that one button, and because I was already logged in, and Derrick's already logged in here, noticing with the lovely profile picture and all, we, in essence, just bought this app, and now next time we log in on another device that doesn't have this application, but we're logged into the Windows Store using the Microsoft account, you can then, it'll say install, or something similar. And then once you install, it'll be prompted with an open button, and for this example, let's hit open. And then I will use your Microsoft account. And usually, actually, it's automatic, and it should.
So again, the app is asking us to sign in some way.
There we go.
And just look at Microsoft account.
Certain applications allow you to kind of use OAuth to authenticate yourself. And so in this case, we are authenticating Wunderlist using the built-in credentials. That's the one nice thing about getting it from the App Store is you don't always need to remember a password. Usually the good apps, or the ones that are built well, will have you with an option to kind of assign it to to your login. So in this case, I'm just going to accept yes, if that's okay with you.
Go ahead.
So when you say it automatically asks you for it when you open up another
You
device,
don't, yeah.
the other device has to be Microsoft compatible. It's not an iPhone, won't work with it.
No. Like, one thing you have to keep in mind is the environment that you're in. If it's a Microsoft environment, usually it'll only be the Windows Store. If it's Android, it'll use the Google Play Store. And then for the Apple, like, usually, you can download this application Wunderlist on other environments, but again, you have to then sync it differently a little bit. You can still use your Microsoft login to then keep that application, and all your tasks will pop up. I've done that, but just that's sort of another subject we can go into detail later. Actually, it should be popping up the task list. It froze up. That is surprising.
Did we freeze the whole machine?
I think the recording might have caused it to.
Oh
Oh no.
So you know it's a live demo when it crashes on you. Oh boy. I don't know what to say. I guess we're gonna have to. Can you control delete that thing?
It's
hard frozen.
it's froze.
Man, your Wunderlist broke my computer. I guess it's not that great of an app. I take back our recommendation.
I still use it on my Android device. I never run into this problem. I think the recording's causing the problem. There was something that kind of happened in between.
All right, let me do a restart on the computer, and we'll keep moving here.
That is a shame.
Oh. I haven't had a recording crash in 3 years.
You can't connect to using Windows 10.
But if it's an iPad or an iPhone, that's a hotspot. You make it a hotspot.
You make it a hotspot, you can't connect your laptop to it.
Can't connect this to it.
You can.
Cannot.
You can.
Sorry. Okay.
Yes, you can.
I can show you later if you wanted to figure that out. Go.
How did you get to the App Store?
Show me again how
By
to go to the App
default, on your initial install of the Windows, if you upgrade from Windows 7 to Windows 10, you'll be presented with this default setup. You'll have the Start menu, you'll have Cortana or the search bar, you'll have what we'll get into later, the virtual desktops, your File Explorer, and Windows Store. Those are usually the main ones that pop up. So the Windows Store is always tagged here. You can always unpin it. Or if you go through all apps and in Store, it should be right
Under
here.
S.
Yep.
It's all alphabetical.
I was thinking Windows Store under W, so that was my fault.
Or you can search for it. I would have searched for it as well. If I didn't find the icon, I just would have started typing and did a search, and you can search for Store too.
And again, you have to be logged into the using the Microsoft account for you to see the App Store. Again, Google requires a Gmail account. Microsoft requires a Microsoft account. Apple requires an Apple account. So that's one thing to keep note of. You might have multiple ecosystems that you're working with, and trying to be compatible with that is its own class.
And one thing people ask me as well at some of our help desks, I've gotten this a few times over the last few months, if I bought the app on my iPhone, do I get it for free on my Windows device now? Sad answer is no, you don't, right? There's a lot of money involved in these apps, and unfortunately, if you bought it for iPhone, it's for all your iDevices now free. If you bought it on the Google device or the Android device, you get it for free on any other Android device. If you buy it in Windows Store, you get to put it on any other Windows device. So you're kind of, in that respect, you're paying for the app from that ecosystem only, unfortunately.
But again, keep in mind that app selection may not be reflective of the other two ecosystems. You just have to search and see if it's there. The hope is that everyone's going to start using or developing for Windows, and they'll have apps available within the desktop. The goal is to get away from the traditional style of installing an app and using a lot of these marketplaces to do that for you.
If you might be wondering, how do I uninstall an app? We installed Wunderlist, which ruined my computer for
Derrick
a few minutes.
hates it now.
So if I want to uninstall it now, since it's got some bad juju, all we have to do is right-click on it, and we can do uninstall. And that's all you have to do to get rid of a Windows Store app. So it's very simple, one-click uninstallation, and everything related to it goes away.
So I thought I could convince Derrick to use Wunderlist, but apparently he doesn't want it anymore, so I'll get uninstalled.
I might reconsider. But that's all it is. Right-click, uninstall, and the app is gone, and I can always put it back on if I want to. So
now,
again, you see how easy it is compared to the disk approach we used to do with legacy apps. Windows Store apps are much, much easier
in that regard.
Now, one thing to keep in mind of is the applications, depending on if you have it set up this way, by default, I believe it is set to automatically update. So if the developer releases an update to that application, you don't have to worry about updates. The Windows Store handles that for you. And let's see if I can find it here. If I go to
All the way at the
settings.
bottom, downloads and updates.
The key here is seeing nothing. That's the hope. You'll see like any new applications that are downloaded and installed. But like me, I always like to hit check for updates, even though I don't need to because it automatically updates. So this should theoretically just update for you. Now, if you're logged into a Microsoft account, a lot of this is done for you. Updates they're trying to make it so people are forced to update their applications. It's done for security and stability purposes, and updates are released through the Windows Store and/or through Windows Update. They're really just trying to make sure that you're always up to date, being as stable and secure as possible. And so, for example, let's see if I can show you. That's the button. So I went to the little head of Derrick over here, and I went to settings. And this allows me to kind of configure certain specific settings. For example, app updates. I can turn this off. If you don't want an application to update automatically, for whatever reason, for example, it's compatible, it's working, why do I need to update it? You could just turn it off right here. So that's one thing I wanted to also mention. And also, when it comes to signing in, certain apps will require, obviously, payment. If you need to enter your credit card information into this, you can then save the settings that are there. And I believe it'll bug you every 30 minutes. No? Yes?
Some kind of time frame. I don't know, some kind of preset time frame.
You can set it to require a password to be done before it'll complete the install. So that's something to keep in mind. Again, this is your manage your devices to see how many devices you are currently logged in under your Microsoft account as. And if you have multiple Microsoft accounts, again, you'll have to keep purchasing applications for each of those Microsoft accounts. So keep that in mind. Those don't transfer. I think that's
That's pretty much it for Windows Store. If there's any other further questions about Windows Store, we'll take them at the end. But I want to make sure we keep on rolling here. So let's keep the show on the road.
I think Cortana is next.
Yes, Cortana, my favorite feature of Windows 10, my favorite part. I'm going to do this demo since I'm really good at it. So Cortana, again, I mentioned Cortana earlier. Cortana is something I've had on my Windows phone for over a year and a half. It's worked really well. It's really neat. Now I have it on my computer. If you have Windows 10 on your desktop computer or laptop computer, you also have it. As long as you didn't hit the privacy things that say, I don't want Cortana looking at my email, I don't want it looking at my contacts, I don't want it doing anything of that, then you may not be able to use it. But if you're okay with that, then you can leverage the power of Cortana. So Cortana is a machine learning service that's built into Windows 10, and if it's turned on, it'll say, ask me anything, right? So that's the phrase that's up there that says it's ready to go, ready for a question to be asked, or a search to be made, or a command to be prescribed to it, whatever that you'd like to do. And I'm going to show off some of those in just a moment. Now, I believe if you can have the feature turned on, Ted, do they already have it where you can do Hey Cortana and just say Hey Cortana and then start doing? I don't think it's built in just yet. I think that's coming in November that you can do that.
I was trying that, and I don't think it was working right.
So,
So I don't think they enabled it just.
come November, you'll be able to turn on something that always listens for you to say, Hey Cortana, then you can just start speaking into your microphone. It's not yet ready as they're still making that adjustment, but you can trigger Cortana very easily by hitting the microphone button to the right of the search bar right over here. That's what we're going to use to do some of our searches here with Cortana. So on the back of the agenda, if you're curious about all the different funky things and things you can search for and ask and try out with Cortana, because I'm working off a list like that as I don't have it memorized, I pulled the list off of one of the links I provided on the back of the agenda at the bottom. There is a line, what bullet point? It is number 3. Under my resources for further learning, there's a short link to a list of Cortana voice commands. And they actually update that website. So when there's new stuff that comes out that you can use Cortana to do, they put it on that page. So it's like your smorgasbord of Cortana stuff that you can learn from right off that site. So you can go to that right off the back of the agenda. But I've got a printed copy here with me. I know, shame on me for burning another tree, but...
One thing I will say, though, is I think Cortana does a very good job at understanding what you're saying. Can be very garbled, and it'll still actually pick it up pretty well. So that's one thing I kind of liked about it, that some of the applications are still sort of playing catch up with that.
So again, the assumption is you have a working microphone that's tested. Luckily, we do. Our computer still works. My microphone is functional. I tested it before class, and it was searching just fine. So as long as the internet works okay with us, and again, this assumes you have working internet connected to your computer. This will not work if you're on the airplane, don't have internet somewhere else where you don't have an internet access. So this does depend on the internet, as it is pumping your voice commands into a big machine service that Microsoft controls. It's very high security, all those different things, so you don't have to worry about leaking out. But again, it has to do that for it to function, just like Siri, just like Google Now. So if you want to use that, you have to be connected to the web. So assuming we have those things down and pat and functional, let's give Cortana a try, see how it works. I'm going to talk into my microphone. Let's try to keep the noise down, as it gets a little garbled sometimes if it can't understand there's background noise. So let's give a few voice commands a try. So I'm going to try, let's try this. How old is Mitt Romney?
Mitt Romney is 68 years old.
So there we go. I presented a simple voice search. It went ahead and understood what I was saying and brought up a contextual search for me right within the Cortana bar and gave me the answer to my question. What would I have to do before? Go into Google, search for it, and hopefully find the website that gives me the answer. This does all the heavy lifting for you in that regard. So it's not only ages I can find with it. That's a very simple question. We can go ahead and do math problems with it, so it can act as a calculator for you. So I could do this. Convert 3 miles to feet. Cortana, you're making me look bad here. Let's try it again. It usually functions again. If there's a blip in internet connectivity for me, it might pop out to the web like that. But let me try another one I did earlier today that worked just fine. What is 21 divided by 7?
The answer is 3.
Thank you. That was good. So Cortana is actually pretty smart, knows her math. Let's try a little something different. Let's see what else we can do
Again,
here.
if it doesn't understand or is not given enough time to kind of complete the voice recognition, it will usually automatically just search it for you.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind.
You can do other things as well. You can do checking a flight status on here. So let me try this flight. We'll see if it's up in the air. Maybe it'll give us a flight status here. Let's give this a try. What is the status of flight AA 5557? Okay, so did a search on that flight. That flight number is not live right now, so it didn't give us a contextual result. But at the very least, even if it doesn't give it the answer to us inside of the Cortana search bar, it'll bring us a search result that gives us the answer, or the Google result, the Bing results, for that particular question. So it tries its best to at least give you something, even if it can't give you an answer right away. Let's try this one. This one was working for me very well earlier. Show me today's news.
Here are top stories for today. The first headline is, Florida School Board reaches $600G settlement over principal who hypnotized students.
Using the news app. So again, this is a little more contextual, nicer example of what it can do. There's also an alternate for that where you can ask about the local news. Let's see if that functions. Show me the local news. Yeah, took me to a search result. So as it's a live demo, some of the things are going to work okay, some of them aren't. There are some questions you can ask about sports scores as well. I think what I do in my last class, I was asking, it was Sunday actually, so I was asking about the Bears game. Are the Blackhawks playing today? Yesterday?
Yes.
Cubs aren't playing this. Anyone playing today?
Ask who the Cubs are playing tomorrow.
Who do the Chicago Cubs play next?
On Friday, The Cubs square off against the Cardinals at 5:45 p.m. Central Time.
So there we go.
The one thing you have to understand about Cortana is that you want to, Microsoft's touting it as a personal assistant, because you can do more than just a lot of these contextual commands. You can even ask, what's in my calendar? And that should theoretically work. Do you have your calendar set up?
I might have disconnected it, so it might not work with that. I actually did last class. I did a test for setting a reminder. Actually,
Yeah.
I'm trying to see what was the.
So you can use this to kind of keep yourself productive. You don't really need a secretary now because Cortana is trying to be your secretary in that sense.
I don't like being St. Louis wins and Steelers and games.
Remind me to pick up dinner on the way home.
Sure. Remind you to pick up dinner when you get to home. Sound good?
Yes.
Okay, I'll remind you. You can also see it in your reminders list anytime.
Thank you.
How does it know the time? Well, how does it know when you got home? Right.
That sort of depends. Usually that goes along with if you have a Windows mobile device. There's GPS associated with that.
I think there's a setting, I believe. I could be mistaken, but I think there's a setting that I set that asks me what my workday hours are, and if I answer that, then it knows what that answer is, and it also knew my address as well, because I told it what my home address was. So that's how some of this happens. You have to give it some info so it can work around, your life, your particular address and contact info and your calendar and things of that nature. So you can see where the whole privacy aspect comes into play. Cortana has to be able to eat into some of these things to be able to work in a manner like that. If you want to use it like this, you don't have to do all these advanced things with it. Just wanted to give you a flavor of some of the aspects of what Cortana can do. Is there a question someone wants me to ask it? Something not on the pre-hash list?
Do you get Cortana by going to the App Store?
No, it's built in.
I don't have it.
We can talk after class and show you.
I have a brand new computer.
If you don't have it and you're on Windows 10, it's probably because you declined the privacy settings that allow you to use it. So that could be why you're not able to see Cortana. Yes, go ahead.
Will the Cubs win?
Let's try that.
Not a fortune teller.
Yeah.
Well, let's see what it says. What she says.
Will the Chicago Cubs win their next game? Didn't have an answer for me, unfortunately.
Ask Cortana how she's doing. I think that'll pop up something.
Cortana, how are you doing?
Great, thanks.
Cortana, can you sing me a song?
Usually that won't work.
It actually sung me a song last night when I tried that.
Ask this question.
Yeah.
What's the meaning of life? No. What's the... Yeah, ask that one.
Cortana, what's the meaning of life?
I've heard from a reliable source that the answer is 42, but still no word on what the question is.
So it's snarky when it wants to be.
It's very similar to Siri in that respect.
What was that?
President.
No, let's try it. Cortana, who will be the next U.S. president? No answer for that. Yeah, we tried.
But if when they download the settings that allow Cortana to work, you just go to settings and does it tell you what you'd have to agree to get Cortana to work? She says she has the computer and it doesn't have the little microphone, which means, and you said, well, it's probably because she didn't allow the settings. So does she
We
go
can
back
dig.
to
We can
settings?
dig in. We'll have some time after, and we can take a look at her laptop with you after class and find that particular. I just don't want to waste too much time trying to find it, up here on the big screen right now. It can be changed. You can enable it at first, like I have it enabled, and turn it off, and you can vice versa
One
turn
thing
it
to
on.
keep in mind, you probably need to be logged into a Microsoft account for it to register properly and for you to use Cortana as well. So keep that in mind. You might need to log into the Microsoft aspect of it, the account through that, for it to work.
Cortana, show me the nearest restaurants. So even if it bumps out to a search result, as we saw, it asked me for, I told it to give me the closest restaurants. and it went ahead and brought me a search result. So again, even if it doesn't provide the contextual answer for us and speak it out loud, at least it'll do its best to give us, you know, what we're looking
Did you
for.
ask the
So
restaurants at 60068?
you try it. What was that 6068?
60068.
Or is it?
Show me the restaurants in zip code 60068. You can try it on your Windows 10 device a little bit later, okay? Just wanted to give everyone a taste of what it can do. So it's pretty neat, and it's also nice in the fact that it's always being updated. So it's Microsoft is making adjustments to it, changing it. Again, 110 million of us using Windows 10 already. That's a lot of data that they can use to keep making it better. So it's only going to keep improving as time goes on, and this little few-page list is going to keep growing much, much larger as we move along. So it's a service that I would definitely try out. You don't have to use it. I think it's pretty neat. I use it in a pinch to get quick answers, use it as a calculator. Saves you time here and there. You know, it all adds up. So, yes?
Unrelated to Cortana, what is OneNote? It keeps popping up.
OneNote is a Microsoft, it's part of the Microsoft Office suite. It's a note-taking program, actually. It's a digital notebook for the most part. So you can use it to type up notes. If you had a stylus pen over here, you'd be able to use that and write on it like a notebook. So it's a typable and writable digital notebook that you can fully search.
Have you ever?
Part of Windows 10 or
Separate.
It's actually completely free if you want to get it.
Yeah.
It used to be a paid app from Microsoft Office. Now it's completely free for everyone.
Have you ever used Evernote? No. Okay. I was gonna say it's pretty much exactly like Evernote. Again.
So here's my class notes from Project Management 556 that I took a few quarters ago. So yeah, I use it. I don't use it all the time, but I like to use it for some stuff.
One thing I want to also keep note is there's two versions of Office that you can that are used in this case here: the desktop applications of it, as well as these Windows Store applications, which I noticed actually popped up on your start menu.
Yeah, so I'm using the desktop app. It's a little more powerful, but I could also open up the OneNote Windows Store app, which is
again, a lot of these are already should sync over, and they should pop up.
So you can see the interface again is lacking some of the advanced features, but it has all the majority of the basics for my notes, and all my notes are syncing up now. My notebook should be coming in as we speak here. And I could choose to use that if I wanted to. And there's
now keep in mind those that have Office, you can use the Windows Store app as well. So if you have like a tablet, for example, and it only accepts Windows Store apps, you can actually download Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and use it there. But you need to have a valid Office 365 subscription for that to work properly. So that's one thing I wanted to keep note of.
all right. So that's OneNote. We went over Cortana. If there's any other further Cortana questions, I'll answer them at the end. I like Cortana a lot, so feel free to ask anything later on once we get to Q&A. Okay. Let's keep moving. Microsoft Edge has replaced Internet Explorer. So what is this Edge browser that we speak of? Again, it's a brand new internet browser, for lack of a better term, that is pre-installed on every Windows 10 device. You don't have a choice. You can't remove it as far as I know. It's forced upon you. You don't have to use it, but it's available on your Windows computer whether or not you knew it. And it's actually represented by the little E icon all the way at the bottom here. It looks like Internet Explorer. It was meant to be similar, so people were familiar with clicking on it. But again, it's a brand new application. Microsoft rebuilt it from the ground up. All the security issues with Internet Explorer have been removed. I mean, it's a totally brand new browsing experience that some people say is better than Chrome or Firefox in some regards.
I personally think it's a lot better than Internet Explorer as a whole.
Yeah.
I think it does a really good job. There's still some hiccups from time to time, but for the most part, it is so much better than Internet Explorer ever was.
Is it tied to Bing? If you click on it.
Well, it ties, if you're doing a search within it, like if I'm searching for,
You can change
change that to...
It searches by default with Bing. Yes, it's a Microsoft product, but you can, I believe, search it. You change the search settings to work with Google if you want, for example.
I had to do what you did to put an icon of Google on the bottom of the pad.
This here?
Sorry.
This is Chrome. That's just Chrome. I just installed Chrome on here.
And
So.
that's what I had to do. I wasn't able to, in Edge, make Google my main search.
I'm pretty certain there's a search setting within there to go ahead and change that. We can take a look at that after class and see if it's where that's sitting. But there are some advanced setting areas where you can go ahead and make some adjustments. So one of the biggest things is I'm going to just focus on some of the smaller nuances with the Edge browser. Follows a lot of the footsteps of what Firefox, what Chrome has been doing. So it's very minimalist. That's the biggest change that you'll notice. All those menu bars that used to be straddling the top area of the page, gone. They're non-existent. They're no longer there. It's meant to be a very clean browsing experience. So you've got your web address bar over here. You've got your back and reload buttons. Very familiar placement for a lot of people. But again, getting a lot of the clunk and junk off of there. So you have more real estate for the stuff that you want to do with it, for lack of a better term. I can open up different tabs for myself in Edge by hitting the little plus icon over here, and that'll open up a brand new page for me, and then I can go wherever I want. News.com, whatever websites I want to go to, and I can go between the different tabs for myself. So again, when I tell people, I get this question last class by a few people, well, should I be using Edge? Should I be using Chrome? What should I be using? I can't answer that for you, honestly, because that is a personal question you have to answer. Try Edge. I tell everyone, try Edge. If you don't like it, you don't have to use it. They're not forcing you to use it. It's another option. Use Firefox, use Chrome if you don't like it, but consider it, give it a try. If you don't like it, you don't have to use it. I mean, it's a personal option, it's a personal opinion. It's not something that you have to use your Windows 10 device, so don't get me wrong on that. Two of the biggest features in Edge that set it apart a little from the other browsers, one of those features is what's called reading mode. And reading mode is something that comes into play if you're going ahead and reading a news article. So if I went ahead and looked at this article over here about sexual assaults with Uber, and I wanted to get rid of all the gunk. So you see I got an advertisement loading over here. I've got all this other stuff showing on the screen. The menu's over here. I want to view a clean version of it to be able to read it and get all the gunk off the screen. What do I have to do? Very simple. This little icon right up here next to the favorite icon where I can add it to my favorites. I can go ahead and click on this, and it does a little wizardry behind the scenes and turns it into almost a magazine article for me. So it makes any news website that follows common browsing standards and design standards. Again, not every website will work with this, but most major websites are formatted in a clean manner where this is going to function okay. So as you saw, all the junk has been removed, and I've got a very clean article that I can print out or read for myself and not have to be impeded by advertising and all the other junk that unfortunately websites need, to just keep afloat these days.
I will say about 80 to 90% of the sites will have the reading mode option, and it really does work a lot better, and it's really, really nice feature to have. I almost wish it came standard on Google Chrome and Firefox.
Yeah, that's the one thing I wish Chrome had is the reading mode. This is really, really nice for reading news articles and not being, diluted with experience by other junk on the screen.
You should be able to turn this off as well.
And I can get out of reading mode as well. If I go ahead and just click the button again, it'll turn it back into traditional website mode, I guess, with all the junk and bells and whistles and all that. So you can go in and out of reading mode on almost any website out on the web.
You have to do it for each one, or can you just leave it for?
I believe you have to force it on for every single website. So let's actually try it. If I do that, if I go into reading mode here and I open up for another website, I think it's going to. Yeah, if I go to another news article, I don't think it's going to stay in reading mode. I think you have to, because again, to be able to navigate the internet, you have to have the menu bars and clickable things, and reading mode takes all that away. So, I don't think it would be feasible to have reading mode on all the time.
One thing to note is, I don't know if you noticed, it was actually grayed out for a while, and it didn't switch over to reading mode until I believe the entire page loaded properly, so that way it can kind of get rid of the gunk. So keep that in mind. So if certain pages are taking a long time to load and you don't see the button there, you probably just have to give it a little bit more time for that button to appear.
All right. The neatest thing that I'm going to mention about Microsoft Edge is a new feature called annotation. I always forget the official name for it. Well, it's called Make a Web Note. Okay, I call it annotation. They call this Make a Web Note. If I wanted to go ahead and take this website and say, for example, mark this site up. For example, if I had a map on here or something, let's go to Google Maps, for example. Maybe this will settle this in a little bit better. Let's go. We got the Park Ridge Library over here in the middle of the screen. Where is it? Right there. Okay. Say I wanted to mark this up somehow, either with my mouse or if I had a touch screen with a stylus. It doesn't matter. Either one works. We're going to use a mouse since that's all I have with me right now. I can go ahead and I can turn this page into a web note pretty much, which is just as it sounds. It'll turn it into a editable site for me in a single click. So now I can go ahead, start drawing. I can go ahead and make some annotations for my bad arrow.
That is an arrow?
Let's erase that. I didn't do that. Okay. So you got your toolbar in the upper left-hand corner here. By default, it's a blue pen where you can go ahead and draw on it and color on it with that pen. So pretty much it took my website and turned it into a piece of notebook paper, and then now I can draw all over. So instead of having to print it, waste that paper, waste the ink, I can make a web note, and then I can go ahead and save this. I can save this into my favorites as well. So it's very neat in terms of either short-term notes while presenting something or sharing something with someone else, or for the long term. If you picked up a map and you had to make a note for yourself about, which way did I need to go down this street and get to my friend's house, right over here, like that. So, U.S. Bank. So whatever it may be. So I can change out of pen mode. I can change to a different color. For example, green.
I'm sorry, you're kind of seeing Derrick's plans for a bank robbery.
Up the street, down the street here. And we'll erase all evidence of that. So what I'm doing is actually I got the eraser out. You can use the eraser and then you can erase what you did on the page. And if I made all kinds of markups for myself on the page.
If they said text, obviously the highlighter option would be better.
Yeah.
Be used here.
Yeah. And you can print from here. Now printing is one thing they haven't put in yet. I wish they had a print button right here. It's probably going to be added sometime very soon. Right now you have to go ahead and click on save, and then you're given an option to go ahead and print it from there. So if I clicked on save over here, I can send it into my quick notes from within OneNote, and then I can view my note, and from here I can then go ahead and print it within the OneNote program. So it's a two-step process now. I would be shocked if that wasn't a one-step process in a few months. Something they're still kind of tweaking and working on.
Again, future upgrades coming in November. So for those 80% that are running Windows 10, you should be expecting an update in Windows Update for an upgrade.
I could go ahead, I can even screen crop that part that I annotated. I can go ahead, it tells me drag to copy region. I can go ahead and maybe I just wanted to show off my bank robbery map over here and cut that out for myself, and I could paste it into an email and share it as a picture, put it into a Word document, whatever I wanted to do with it. So again, web notes are very flexible. You don't have to just use it for just saving them. You can copy something out, snip it out, crop it out, and put it into another app that you may be using. So very neat, very functional. Again, Chrome, Firefox don't have this feature. I think it's very powerful. I think it's the absolute #1 thing about Edge that I really, really like about it. And one of the things that I definitely recommend you try out is this web annotation. Pretty neat functionality. And again, you can do this on any website. It doesn't have to just be Google Maps. You can go to any web page in the world to go ahead and do this. We can go over to the Wall Street Journal, Wall Stress Journal. Any website in the world, doesn't matter which one. I have yet to run into a website that didn't work properly with it. It's a feature that is completely separate from the browser itself. So go into annotation mode, and then I can start making my drawings on here.
I think this would be a great feature for those that like to cook. Say, for example, you have a recipe up here. You can kind of make little annotations on it, and then
recipe's perfect. Good, very good example. Pull up a recipe. You can take out some of the things you don't need from there and highlight some aspects that you wanted to make sure you were looking at as you were doing your cooking. Perfect use case example for that.
The one thing I think it doesn't do is actually if you have a scrollable page That's one thing to keep a note of. You might have to make multiple copies of that page. So if a recipe is really, really long, you might not be able to see the whole thing. So that's just one thing to keep note of.
Yeah. But pretty neat. So that's make a web note. That's the annotation feature within Microsoft Edge. And that's really all I wanted to show off. I made a note on the agenda stating that there are no extensions available yet for Edge. It's a feature that Microsoft's going to be flipping the switch on very soon. Again, they're taking security very, very seriously, so they're not just going haphazard about it. So extensions like things, I don't know, some of the extensions that you use, day to day from Chrome.
RoboForm password.
LastPass. I use LastPass to manage my passwords. That's one thing I still need Chrome for because there's no extension yet for Edge for that. But as soon as Microsoft turns it on, I'd be shocked if we couldn't get the same stuff, in there for that. So that's the one downside is no extensions yet for it.
I like to use Pocket personally to save my articles. So.
All right, so let's keep moving. I want to get through this so we can get to Q&A, as I'm sure there are a lot of questions. We'll answer it at the end, okay? I'm really sorry, but we got one last part I want to get through, and then we'll open the floor to Q&A in about probably 5 minutes or so here, okay? So some of the productivity enhancements that have come with the Windows 10 operating system, one of the interesting ones that Ted actually showed me how to use was this function called SnapTag. Do you want to show off SnapTag,
Yeah,
how
sure.
it functions?
Okay, one of the features I'm very happy about, it's one of those things I had to always rely on third-party applications to kind of allow me to do this, is in Windows 7, they had this option where you can snap your window to the edge of the screen. But you can only split it in half. Now they've changed that. You can actually do quadrants, which I'll show you. Let's just open up another app here. Let's go for Word. Sample. So in this case, actually let's do multiple windows
And
here.
if Word looks different to you and it looks unfamiliar, it's because I'm running 2016 already, and that's how it looks now in the new version.
So let's start off the normal Windows 7 way. Now, it's going to look a little different on the first time through, and I'll show you why. Now, on here, you have this very gloss-like preview window. So I move this to the edge of the screen, and it's going to give me 50% of the screen, so this application is going to take up that 50%. But now, I have a selection of all the open windows that I have running here. So in this case, I can select the other side of the screen to all these other available applications. For example, this guy. But let's say I don't want to do that. Well, with Windows 10, I could do quadrants. This really comes in handy for me because I always like to have something here to take notes with, and then I'll kind of compare and contrast two windows. So I'll move this guy up, and it's going to give me a different preview of...
And again, you went to the upper left corner for
Yes.
that to happen, so everyone knows.
Again, so I dragged it up here, and again, you get that same preview that you would expect. And then if I move it closer to the middle of the screen, I get that 50%, 50%. But I want it up to be a quarter of it, so you can see the preview being a quarter. So then now, these are the remaining windows that are not accessible. And this is kind of a nice feature. So I have, in this case, this PC, while this is the C drive. And then on the other side, I have Word. So I'm just going to open up the other File Explorer. And now, in this case, I have 3 windows. I have 50% of Word, and then 25% quarter of the screen with C drive, 25% of this PC. Now I can add a 4th app, which I'll open up. Let's do one of the the Windows Store. So now I can move this guy to this quadrant. Okay, it doesn't always work with Windows Store apps. Usually it works well though.
Let's open up Notepad.
Yeah, let's do
Notepad's
Notepad.
simple.
So if I bring this now over here, I have 4 quadrants. And I think this is one of the best features in Windows 10 that's on by default. And just how it's rearranged makes my life so much easier, because I could just compare and contrast without requiring anything. And it's one thing I'd recommend everyone try and use. Let's see, shall we go into...
Virtual desktops.
Yeah,
let's
let's
show
do
that
that.
off. And then then we'll get into Q&A.
Another feature in Windows 10 is virtual desktops. I'll go over it. To get to that view, there's a keyboard shortcut, but by default, there is a taskbar here. Again, you can customize these, hide these if you really don't use them, but I won't go into that. I'm going to hit the task view, and this allows me to have multiple desktops or workspaces. So when I click it, I'm presented with all the windows that I have open in this desktop, but I also have a second desktop. This is fresh, clean. I don't really have very much running on it. I open up a new set of applications. So I can have a virtual desktop with Excel documents that I have all my Excel stuff on there. Then another one could be, I can have Word.
Music. You could be playing music in one of them.
So it's just another way of organizing your information that you have running. Bear in mind, if you have a lot of desktops open, and you're, say, for example, either restarting the machine or doing some other stuff with that, you might need to close out these virtual desktops. But I think we ran a test, and we had like a good, how many, 100 like virtual desktops.
Almost 100.
I mean, we lost count.
It becomes unwieldy after a certain point. So.
But like, say you like accidentally click too many times, you're like, how do I get rid of it? You just hover over it, and you're presented with a simple little X, and you can always kind of scroll through each of them and figure out which one you wanted to go through. The only thing I wish it did have, they may release it, is actually renaming these, because right now you're sort of forced to do desktop 1, 2, 3. But the way it is presented is it previews live with the folders that you do have open.
And show moving apps between them, Ted. How we can drag it into another desktop.
Yes. Oops. So I should be able to take the application that I have and just drag it right in. And you can see it kind of just minimizes into it. And now the application that I have in this desktop is now moved to this other one. Let me minimize this guy. And so that's one easy way I can kind of, I'm sorry?
How did you start off the desktop thing? I mean, I see
Right here, this little icon right here, this task view. And again, that's on by default for any new installations. So I click it, and then let's go to desktop 1. I hovered over it to enter this sort of preview section. And then I want to move this app, this Word app, into desktop 2. So again, I just drag and drop, and there we go. And here we are.
So again, virtual desktops is useful for those of you that have a lot of stuff open. You're either researching and writing an email, or looking at a recipe and making notes for yourself, and want to keep things a little more organized than we used to with just having 1,000 windows open and trying to get between them all. This kind of solves that problem for us of, hey, let's organize where we have things open. I got my email stuff on one desktop, I've got my research on one desktop, I've got my Excel stuff on another desktop, so I can go between and have some order and logic to what I'm doing during the middle of the day, right? So for some of you it makes sense, for some of you it may not. Some people will never use this, but I want you to know it's there if you aren't one of those 10, 20%ers that just have too many windows open and are drowning in Windows during the workday.
Now, I fell into this trap last time, and I just wanted to briefly mention it, is when I'm pressing and holding my mouse and dragging it to the side. If you accidentally do that, and you just wanted to have this one app here take up 50% of your screen, and you don't want any other apps on this side, just click into the quadrant that you're using, and that'll cancel out the other application. That happens to me a few different times. It's a little bit of a learning curve to get around that, but it does come in handy once you get used to it. So again, I dragged it to the side, clicked into the application that has already expanded, and there we go. And again, you don't always have to use that feature, but you can also see that it sort of locks itself on the edge of the screen here. It won't do everything, but it at least will do partial locking, which is kind of nice.
And I use that function a lot actually when I'm using Excel, for example. I've got a long list of stuff I'm doing for a client project. I'll use that lock feature. I'll narrow down Excel very narrowly to the column that I want. I'll shift it over to the side of the screen I want to use it in, and then I'll rearrange what I need on the right-hand side. So again, it's very nice in terms of stacking things next to each other where you need to be able to reference here and there and here and there, very, very quickly. So that's just the way I use it day to day.
That's about it.
Yeah, I guess we'll open the floor to Q&A at this point. That's everything we had for the formal Presentation.
I'll mention one quick thing. You can use keyboard shortcuts to do a lot of these gestures as well if you're very kind of focused on keyboards. And the way to do that is actually to use the Windows key and then the arrow keys. So for this example, it's a combination of both. It's like Control-Alt-Delete. But in this case, you do Windows, and then I'm going to do right, and it just snaps right in. And then in this case, I would actually recommend, if you want to do quadrants, you do Windows, and actually since it's already snapped to the edge, I would do the up arrow. And so you can make it into a quadrant. Or down arrow to do 50%, then down arrow again to do another quadrant.
Where's the Windows key? I don't even know where that is.
It's on the keyboard.
Lower left-hand corner by default, or to the right of Control. Usually to the right of Control.
In between Control key and Alt key. We can show you on the on that. Yes, you have a question?
When I close down my computer, I get a runtime error, something goes.
That might be because of Visual Studios that might not be installed properly. You know, I've actually had that happen to me once before as well. I've had that issue happen to me as well. Make sure you run Windows updates again. Usually it's on by default. You might need to run it once manually for it to kind of kick in.
And another question, do I have to decide to get an account in Microsoft at some point? You know how they ask you to decide, I've avoided that.
If you want to use Cortana, if you want to use Windows Store, so a lot of the cool new stuff that was introduced, you need a Microsoft account for it. So no way around that, unfortunately.
Where do you go to get it on the screen?
When you log in for Windows 10, they'll present you with a create a new Microsoft account.
I've already got it on here. How do I get it now?
I'll show you.
After we're done with Q&A, we'll show you personally how to go ahead and make it. Okay? Go ahead. Question.
Just a Word.
Yes.
So I assume I have a Microsoft account.
Where'd you purchase Word from?
Microsoft.
From Microsoft? You probably do. Yeah, I think you're forced to get one when you purchase Office. So you probably have that. The same email address and password you use will be your Microsoft account. Yeah. Go ahead. Yes, in the back.
Do you need to reinstall all the software that you put on, reinstall it after you put in Windows 10?
No. I've actually did an upgrade on my work computer, which I shouldn't have, but I did it anyway. And it actually worked pretty seamless. All the applications that I had already running worked well, and I didn't have to touch anything. It did a pretty good job with that.
Thank you.
Didn't, for me, capture all the files I had. Capture the software, but it didn't capture
That is interesting. They might have been hidden away in another part of the drive, I wonder.
There's anomalies for any situation, and I think that was more of an anomaly than anything. We've done a lot of Windows 10 upgrades. I have yet to see that happen to any of our systems.
I have an anomaly, another anomaly. I opened it up after using it for a
Sure.
and it had a portrait orientation.
Okay.
And I used it to get into the settings to find out how to change it to a
That sounds like a driver bug with probably the video chipset that's on the laptop. The older the machine gets, the more of those little quirky things that can happen. So.
Other questions?
Who else? Go ahead.
Let's see, in Windows 7, you have multiple users. Each user has a fine document.
Mhm.
You also have public documents. Is that carried over?
Public documents, I believe, still does exist in Windows 10. I mean, you can browse through my user folder and see. I think it's still there. No, go back.
Is it DW?
Yeah, public.
Oh.
Public guide, the public folder is where
Sorry.
the public
Yeah, my bad.
documents are kept.
I don't know where I'm
So.
thinking.
It still exists. They're de-emphasized now a little more, but it's still available if you want to use it.
How did you get that?
I went using File Explorer,
Right.
and then below that there is a little disk PC,
Oh, yeah.
which is also referred to as computer or my computer in the old Windows operating systems. Then they went to C drive. Users.
Again, they're de-emphasizing public folders because their OneDrive is kind of taking over a lot of the public folder stuff with sharing. So, I wouldn't be shocked if public folders went away at some point, but it's still around for now.
If you access the folder, it usually will pop up in a quick access if you keep going to that folder, which will appear. Yeah, I don't see the public folders in the left side any longer on my other computers. So,
Which is good when you're offline.
any more questions about that, I mean, we can go over the details on that later.
Go ahead. Do you have someone else have a question? Go ahead, Nicola.
Can you import your favorites from Internet Explorer to Edge?
If you're doing an upgrade, I believe it, don't hold me to it, but I believe it copies them over during the Windows 10 upgrade process. I believe, I'm about 90% sure of that. Yes?
You say that the updates are forced. Is it any time you're connected to the internet, or do you have to do a restart?
Usually, they will usually automatically download for you, and like when you connect to the internet, they'll scan for updates, download them, and then usually it'll bug you. Is now a good time to restart? And usually the next restart will force the installation of those updates.
But in terms of, do you have to be online to get the updates?
Yeah.
Yes, that's always the case.
But that's when it happens.
That's when it happens. When it sees internet's connected, then it starts querying to see, hey, what needs to be updated
Now,
on this machine.
depending on your internet connection, actually, if you have multiple Windows 10 devices in your home, actually, Microsoft is sort of smart enough where it won't download them all over again. They'll actually query out to your other computers and then pull those updates rather than download them again. So the update process is a little bit quicker that way. Yes?
For your, if you have a Windows phone, is Microsoft going to automatically update it to Windows 10, or do you have
Depends on the phone.
Okay.
I have Windows Lumia, not Microsoft Lumia 530, which is a very entry-level device, and that's actually going to be supported with Windows 10. Most Windows mobile phones will make the migration to that.
When is it going to? Do you know when? That's
I think they're going to try to release because Windows 10 for desktop, they're trying to make a major upgrade release in November sometime. I think late November. I think is around the same time they're going to also no, I take that back. I just read an article that said they were going to do that. I think Q1 2016. So in a few months.
Oh, okay.
My apologies.
It's almost there. I mean,
and it just
we're months away. So.
It automatically does it.
Yeah, they focused on the desktop first. They wanted the computers to get updated first, then the phones and tablets were coming next.
All right.
Go ahead.
As compared to Windows 10, it seems that there's no Windows Defender.
It's still around, actually.
It's
We've
built in.
changed names.
It's there. If we do control
Couldn't
panel.
find it.
It actually is right. Yeah, it's still there. Now it's turned off because I got my ESET software on because I don't necessarily trust the internal built-in security software as much. But it's still there as your lowest line of defense if you don't want to put anything else on the system.
How did you find it?
So.
I went to the classic control panel. I just searched for control panel. And then, again, you can see the difference between a Windows Store app and a desktop app. And they're considering the control panel here as a desktop application.
Or you can search for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you install Windows 10 and you have no other antivirus program, Windows Defender is forced on. You can't even choose to disable it. It's forced on you. Because again, they want all machines to at least have a baseline of security.
We recommend everyone download an antivirus. The one we all use is ESET. They're a good antivirus to use. If I would check your antivirus settings to make sure that it doesn't say trial expired or anything like that. So keep that in mind.
What was it again?
ESET. E-S-E-T. I believe Derrick and I taught a class, basic Windows maintenance.
Maintaining your home PC.
Yeah, maintaining your home PC. Check on the FireLogic website. We go over in detail kind of tips and troubleshooting things on that.
If you have more questions about it, you can ask us after class.
That too.
Quick question
Go ahead.
with regard to ESET. I have ESET as well, but you have to disable the protection to upgrade Java, for instance. Because Java started and would not continue. And then I showed when we did a report on ESET, it had 3 attempts about the same time frame.
You know, what happened there most likely is ESET catches a lot of things that get bundled behind your back, and Java's actually kind of nasty in the respect that they like to put hidden stuff in the installation file for Java, so they probably tried to bundle like a toolbar of some sort, and ESET caught that, and that's why it got stopped.
So I live with old Java.
No, there's a clean version that you can get. Well,
Okay.
9.9, I guess,
Yeah.
I can talk to you after class about 9.9, how you can do updates cleanly without the junkware in it.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
What's a snipping tool?
That should still be here. And usually for snipping. Oh, the snipping tool. That is basically making it's like a cleaner version of print screen, where you can actually hit new, and it grays this whole thing out. And if, like, for example, as long as it's on the screen, you can snip it. So in this case, I could actually snip this portion of the page, and it'll save it as a JPEG or PNG.
I use snipping tool all the time. I'm always conversing with clients over email, and they're asking me, well, where do I click on this to find that? I snip it on from the screen, and I'll circle it with the highlighter so they can see exactly what I'm talking about. Snipping tool is fantastic. It's completely free. It's built into every copy of Windows since Vista, I believe. So definitely take a look at it and take advantage of it. It's an awesome, awesome free tool.
If you don't want to use Edge, I guess you can use snipping tool.
Works really well. And you can just hit, when you make a snip like this, you just hit copy next to the save icon. You can hit copy, and you can paste it into an email or paste it into a Word document. So it's really, really versatile in that regard.
Or just send it as an email if you have the mail client. Other questions, comments, concerns, worries?
Otherwise, we're going to draw for the raffle. For those of us that didn't leave yet. Does everyone have a raffle entry that wanted to be in on the raffle? Because otherwise, you can't win a goodie bag. If you didn't. If you didn't, you can fill one out over here. We've got.
Please, no double entries.
If you were open, you just walk up to the table and then just pop one into the bucket there.
Triple, quadruple are okay, but no double.
Please, no multiple entries.